Stop! What are you doing?" The entire diner froze as the millionaire's hand gripped the waitress's shirt, yanking it so hard the fabric tore with a sharp rip. Plates clattered, forks paused mid-air, and every eye locked on the trembling young woman, her breath caught, her eyes wide with shock and fear. But as the torn shirt slipped from her shoulder, a tattoo was revealed, one that made the room go dead silent. Why did a single mark on her skin leave even the boldest customers speechless? And what secret was this millionaire so desperate to expose? What happened next would change everyone in that diner, forever. Jasmine had worked at Mel's diner for 3 years, weaving through crowded tables with practiced grace and a warm, easy smile. She was known for her quick wit and the way she remembered every regular's order: extra syrup for Mr. Harris, no onions for Mrs. Lee. For most, Jasmine was the heart of the diner, her laughter echoing through the clatter of dishes and the hum of morning chatter. But beneath her cheerful exterior, Jasmine carried the weight of being the only black waitress in a small, mostly white town. She'd learned to brush off the sideways glances, the too loud whispers, and the customers who sometimes forgot to tip. Still, she kept her head high, determined to prove herself through hard work and kindness. On this particular Saturday, the diner buzzed with its usual weekend rush. The bell above the door jingled, and in walked a man no one could ignore, a millionaire, famous for his sharp suits and sharper tongue. He took a seat by the window, his eyes following Jasmine as she moved from table to table. She felt his gaze, heavy and unblinking, but forced herself to focus on her work. Jasmine had no idea that today, her life would be turned upside down. She couldn't have known that a single moment, one she'd never see coming, would expose not just her secret, but the town's deepest prejudices. And as the tension in the air thickened, even the regulars sensed that something was about to shatter the calm of their familiar diner. The morning rush at Mel's diner was always a test of patience, but today the air felt heavier. Jasmine moved quickly, balancing plates and coffee pots, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The millionaire, Mr. Whitmore, sat alone at his table, his expensive watch glinting in the sunlight. He barely touched his food, his eyes fixed on Jasmine with a cold, calculating stare. It started small. When Jasmine brought his coffee, he didn't thank her. Instead, he looked her up and down, his lips curling into a smirk. "You sure you work here?" he asked, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. The question hung in the air, sharp and humiliating. Jasmine forced a polite smile, nodding. "Yes, sir. Can I get you anything else?" He ignored her answer, waving her away like she was invisible. The regulars exchanged uneasy glances, but no one said a word. Jasmine's hands trembled as she poured coffee for another table, her mind racing. She'd dealt with rude customers before, but something about Mr. Whitmore's tone made her skin crawl. Minutes later, he called her back. "You missed a spot," he said, pointing to a tiny crumb on his table. Jasmine wiped it away, but he leaned in, his voice low. "People like you should be grateful for any job they can get." The words stung, but Jasmine kept her composure, refusing to let him see her pain. As the diner filled with laughter and clinking silverware, Mr. Whitmore's comments grew bolder. He made jokes about Jasmine's hair, her accent, even the way she walked. Each remark was a dagger, meant to remind her she didn't belong. The other waitresses shot her sympathetic looks, but no one intervened. The manager, busy in the back, seemed oblivious to the growing tension. Then, as Jasmine delivered a plate to a nearby table, Mr. Whitmore's voice boomed across the room. "Hey, waitress, come here!" The diner fell silent. Jasmine walked over, her heart pounding. He stood up, towering over her. "You hiding something under there?" he sneered, gesturing to her shirt. The room tensed. Forks paused mid-air. Jasmine tried to step back, but Mr. Whitmore grabbed her arm. "Let's see what you're so proud of," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. In one swift motion, he yanked at her shirt, the fabric, tearing with a sickening rip. Gasps echoed through the diner as Jasmine stumbled, her shoulder exposed. But it wasn't just the violence that shocked the room. It was the tattoo revealed on Jasmine's skin. A bold, beautiful symbol of her heritage, inked in vibrant colors. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Mr. Whitmore's face twisted in confusion, then anger. The regulars stared, some in awe, others in shame. Jasmine stood frozen, her secret now, on display for everyone to see. The silence was deafening. Would anyone stand up for her? Or would the town's silence speak louder than words? The answer, Jasmine realized, would change everything. For a heartbeat, the diner was frozen in stunned silence. Jasmine stood exposed, her tattoo, a vibrant Sankofa bird symbolizing the importance of remembering one's roots, blazing against her skin. Mr. Whitmore's hand still gripped the torn fabric, his face twisted with a mix of triumph and disgust. Jasmine's breath came in shallow bursts. She could feel every eye in the room on her, some wide with shock, others narrowed in judgment. The humiliation burned hotter than the coffee she'd just poured. Mr. Whitmore's voice cut through the silence, sharp and cruel. See, this is what happens when you let people like her serve you, hiding behind fake smiles and secrets. A plate crashed to the floor. Mrs. Lee, usually so quiet, stood up, her voice trembling but clear. "That's enough!" she shouted, her words slicing through the tension. The regulars looked at each other, uncertain, but something in the air had shifted. Jasmine's hands shook, but she refused to look away. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back, standing tall despite the shame and fear. Mr. Whitmore sneered, but his confidence faltered as more customers began to murmur. "You can't just treat people like that," someone else said, louder this time. The manager finally rushed out from the kitchen, eyes wide as he took in the scene. "Sir, you need to leave now." Jasmine's heart pounded as Mr. Whitmore hesitated, his power slipping away with every second. The diner, once silent, now buzzed with outrage and support. Jasmine realized she wasn't alone, not anymore. But as Mr. Whitmore stormed out, slamming the door behind him, Jasmine wondered, would this moment spark real change? Or would the town's old wounds simply fade back into silence? As the door slammed shut behind Mr. Whitmore, the diner seemed to exhale all at once. Jasmine stood in the center of it all, her shirt torn but her spirit unbroken. Mrs. Lee rushed to her side, wrapping her in a gentle embrace. Other customers offered words of comfort, some apologizing for not speaking up sooner. The manager, shaken and ashamed, promised Jasmine that she would always have a place at Mel's Diner and that no one would ever be allowed to treat her that way again. But the impact of that day reached far beyond the walls of the diner. News of the incident spread quickly through town, sparking difficult conversations in homes, schools, and churches. Some people, for the first time, began to question the silence they'd always accepted. Others reached out to Jasmine, sharing their own stories of being made to feel less than because of the color of their skin. Jasmine's tattoo, once a private symbol of her heritage, became a rallying point, a reminder that pride in one's identity is not something to hide, but something to honor. She found herself invited to speak at community meetings, her voice growing stronger with every story she told. The pain of that day never fully faded, but it became a source of power, fueling her determination to stand up for herself and others. Racism doesn't always look like shouting or violence. Sometimes, it's the quiet acceptance of injustice, the silence of bystanders, the weight of a stare. But change begins when even one person refuses to stay silent. So what would you do if you saw injustice unfold right in front of you? Would you speak up or look away? The answer could change someone's life. If this story moved you, share it. Start a conversation, because real change starts with us, all of us.